the question is, what's the kind of creative thinking that goes into a transmedia campaign, and how is it different from a traditional advertising campaign?
It's sort of similar to what I was saying before. I don't know that there's a core difference. Well, it depends on how people approach it, because I think what my answer would be to how you approach a traditional advertising campaign could be different than this person's. But the essence of a transmedia campaign is about figuring out the story. Who's the character? What's the fiction there? What's the reality that's there? And that, of course, ties back to the audience and who you're trying to reach. So some of those mechanics that are the same in traditional media, who's your audience, what's your objective, what's the message, blah, 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 still exist, but there's a richer level of detail that goes into telling a story versus creating a message, right? It's meaning, it's not a message. It's a whole conversation, it's a whole experience as opposed to just a campaign or an ad.
What do you think we'll call all this stuff?
Storytelling.
Storytelling.
I think it's just storytelling, and I think that we're using lots of platforms to tell stories, and that's all it is. I mean, it's not anything. There's no secret sauce. It's really good stories. It's either the story of your brand, the story of your characters, or the story of your audience, and those are the three things that I deal with.
I think, the question of B2B versus B2C always comes up whenever there's a new buzzword in the conversation, and I think it's great that you said storytelling is what it will become, because that's what it was, and that's still what it is. And we like to have a buzzword to all sort of get excited about, like the shiny new object, social media, transmedia, internet, whatever. Like, it doesn't matter. It's about storytelling, and I think the truth of the most effective, impactful, engaging, innovative, awesome advertising, marketing, whatever word you prefer. Drink. Do we still have prizes? We'll just applaud for you. Yay! The backbone of those is storytelling. It's a different mindset, though, right? Like, your clients come to you and they say, I need to sell this product. How do we get it? We need to sell 50% more of this in the next quarter. And so you sit down and you're like, okay, we'll do this and we'll do that, and we'll do search engine optimization, and you do all these things. But there's no storytelling in that. Like, the closest you get to storytelling is, what's the message? What's the tagline? This is a different way of thinking about it. It's forget the channel, forget the tactic. Like, you want to talk about integrated? This is integrated. This is none of that stuff. Like, just throw it all off the table and then go, what's the story? What's the story that's going to resonate with the people that are ultimately going to buy this? What's the fiction we can create? What's the reality that exists? What's the past? What's the present? How do we infiltrate that? How do we create that? It's like a whole, almost different, attitude towards it, but it's so powerful. And that's what I hope you guys walk away with. Not like the buzzwords and like the examples so much, other than them illustrating that key idea.
No, I'll actually add to that, I almost think B2B is a misleading kind of like term for it, because it's always humans to humans.
Yeah.
And humans love stories. So, at the end of the day, you're dealing with another human on the end of that, receiving end of the call or the email or whatever. And, it's a great way to engage humans.
Yeah, it's interesting. The projects that I've worked on that have really worked the best have been when we've had an emotional story, where people actually can take a different step into things. It's not just one of those sort of cold narratives. It's something where they start to care about the characters. They want to show up for the story. They want to find out what's going to happen next. And that's sort of, I think, where we're at now. Is we've learned how to play with the tools. We know what platforms are best to deliver different targets. And now, how do we tell better stories?
If you're in marketing and you try to sell this, the big question you get is, well, how am I going to measure if this is working? So, can you talk a little bit?
It's the age-old question. I mean, we eye roll and laugh about, well, how do you measure a TV ad? I mean, it's the same thing. Like, you measure it at some point downstream. You measure sales, you extrapolate, or you map those back against the marketing activities that you did, and you see it's not as precise as a click-through rate, although a click-through rate, what does that really tell you? It tells you people clicked. It doesn't tell you why. It doesn't tell you when. It doesn't tell you anything about the response behind that. So we're still sort of struggling with that same question that we've had as marketers for eons. How do you measure it? My personal view on this is we all need to be a little bit more patient and wait for the it's a longer term measure. It's not just about the click. I mean, we can track metrics so we can see trends, and that helps us adapt and decide where to turn the dials a little bit. But when we're talking about storytelling, that's not, it's not a direct marketing tactic. It's not, here's the limited time offer, buy now. You know, it's a much more human, visceral, it needs to live and breathe and be created. And so we can't measure it in those same traditional ways, but over the long run, we measure it the same way we've been measuring advertising for decades. People buy it, the stock goes up, or they don't, the stock goes down.
And people, also the measurement of getting people to talk about it. And
Yes.
Where is that happening? A lot of what I do is I'll design so that as I roll out with a project, I work with the PR department, and we are simultaneously putting out story, and I'm also sending out press releases and specialized story press packets, so that the press is talking about what is happening in this story, in this event, so that coverage of the narrative that I'm creating becomes the reach, right? People are reading about it. They may not even be seeing the actual thing, but they're reading about it, so I'm touching in all those other ways.
Yeah, and I just want to add that there are tons of things we can measure. So to satisfy clients, there's lots of numbers we can show.
Yeah.
Reach, resonance, like there are lots of things, because so much of it is digital, that we can track and show progress around. But like the real deep answer to, is this story resonating with people, takes a little bit more time to get the full picture and to get the fine nuances about what really worked and what didn't, in the same way that it takes time to measure that in more traditional forms.